Oh, welcome to Screencast 16 for the Royal Conservator of Scotland, Introduction to Vectorworks. This is the final screencast before I'm going to ask you to do a task and send it to me. This screencast will be looking at this Move by Points tool. It will be the first one where I'm asking you to follow along with me. You will possibly or probably need to pause the screencast as we go through in order to do the same steps that I'm doing. Please take your time and do the steps in the sequence I'm asking, because this tool here, this Move by Points tool, is a very powerful and very can be quite a complex tool. So I really want you to get your head around it, because understanding this tool will save you a bucket load of time in the future, I promise you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a grid. I've just done it there just before I started recording, but we'll go through it again. It was covered very early on in the screencast, so hopefully you've remembered, but if not, we'll go down to the bottom right, we'll double click on the Snap to Grid tool. We will make a 100mm by 100mm symmetrical grid, a 100 by 100mm symmetrical reference grid, which just means we are snapping to the same corners as the snap grid. Remember I said the snap grid and reference grid the same unless there's a good reason not to. And then we're going to make sure show grid is ticked, and then that means that I kind of zoom out a little bit here. I've still got the rectangles from the previous screencast. I'll just get rid of them. Just select. It's trying, I didn't have the select tool on. Select, there. Okay. So we're going to make sure the scale is 1 to 25 here up in the top. We did that earlier on as well. We are going to, I'm going to click on this tool here, the little zoom extent there, just to make sure that 0 and 0 are round about the middle of the screen. There it is there. 0 and 0, kind of left hand side just beside the wall. Here 0, there 0, and I'm going to zoom in so I can see the grid a little better. Okay, so that's everything set up. I am going to now choose the circle tool and give it the diameter, and give it a 500mm diameter. So that's, again, we make sure that the snapping is on. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 500mm diameter. Okay, that's why the snapping is useful. I'm going to make a square. I'm going to do edge to edge and do a 500mm by 500mm. Again, I can see in the floating toolbar, but I don't need to type into that because I'm popping between 300, 400, 500 there. And then I'm going to do a triangle. So if you remember, we're going to use the regular polygon tool. Got that one wrong. And we're going to use that edge mode there, because that's going to make life easier for us. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, because the top to bottom won't be 500 due to Pythagoras. So I'm going to make sure that that sitting there. Okay, so we have a circle, a square, and a triangle. Each of them have a width of 500. Triangle doesn't have a height of 500 because that's how triangles work. I am going to make the circle red, okay, just for this exercise. I'm going to make the square green. Give it a darker green, maybe that. And I'm going to make the triangle yellow, one of the base colors up here. Okay, so I'm going to select the circle, and then we're going to look at the Move by Points tool. So the Move by Points tool is this arrow and the two little dots here. So the first Move by Points tool is it's a moving tool. We're going to ignore that one at the moment. We're going to move and duplicate. We're going to move. Well, no, let's not. So we're going to move that one. Move the objects along a vector. So if I click that first one, click the center of the circle and then move it out, I'm just going to move it along. Not hugely useful at the moment, but just to let you know that that's what it does. I can type in that 1000 and there, it'll move it along. The second one is more useful. So this is duplicates. So I'm going to make 4 more. So I'm going to have 5 objects. So if I type in 4 duplicates here, and this little icon here, retain object, so that means the first object is going to remain, and I'm going to do 4 duplicates, therefore ending up with 5. Now if I click the center left of that circle and then move my cursor to the right, if I move that 1000, say, it's counting the 1000 between the first click, the left hand side of the circle, and the left hand side of the next circle. And I click that, and that will give me 5 circles because I had object retention on. I could click the center and do, I can't really do 1000 because the center isn't in the middle of a, I can type in 1000 in the box, 1000 here, but it's not clicking to it because it's not. There we go, 1000, and there's my circles which have 1000 spacing between the center and the center. Again, so I'll just do it once more. What I'm trying to point out is that the first click and the second click, this one should do exactly the same thing again. If I click the edge there and do 1000, it will be exactly the same as it was from that edge. It's from the left hand side of the circle to the left hand side of the circle. This time it's from the right hand side of the circle to the right hand side of the circle. So the reference point is the same point. We're not measuring the gap. That's what I'm trying to go over here. That's not what I'm measuring. It's how far apart the objects are and the same point on each one. If I go to the square and I choose move by points and choose the second option here, the second option is going to do 4 more. We're going to keep the original object, but this time I'm going to define where the start and the last point is. So this is the bottom left of the last square. So I've defined the overall as opposed to the distance between. That could be really useful if you're placing lights on a bar and you want to place 10 lights along a bar and have them evenly spaced. Put 1 light on the end, say how many duplicates you want, take your line and draw it along the bar, remembering that, say it was the center of the line, you'd be placing where the center of the last light was, and draw your evenly spaced lights along the bar. Quite a useful tool for that, for the lighting people. And then the last one, I want to show you a slightly different way of doing this. So this isn't necessarily in move by points mode. This is using duplicate. So if I select the triangle, and I'm just showing you a slight alternative, and I do duplicate, edit duplicate, which is Command D. I had to search for it there because I only ever use Command D. It's one of the ones that I use quite a lot. So if I chose the triangle and did Command D, it gives me a duplicate, and it's kind of guessed pretty well where I want the next triangle to start. If I didn't want, if I wanted it to be twice as far, and this time when I press Command D again, it should remember the spacing between the first duplicates placed and when I ran the command again. So that Command D is a really, really useful one. If I take one circle and do Command D on it, it kind of slightly offsets it there to let me see it. It does that deliberately so I don't end up losing. I could Command D and think nothing's happened and they all stack up on top of each other. It is an option that can be switched off. It's called offset duplicates. But the Command D there, I've placed it that distance above the first one, so now when I do some more Command Ds, it will continue to place them in the same spacing again. So it's quite quite a useful tool. And I'm just Command Zing or undoing back again. The last part of this tool here, going back to the tool, is offset distance thing. So this final tool here is super useful, and it moves the selected object a distance away from the next point, which you will now define. So this triangle here is a certain distance away from the square. So if I choose the triangle and I choose the reference point mode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the top of the triangle, which is the object I'm going to move. So the selected object always moves. It's always the object that's going to move. I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to click the bottom center of the square, green square, and it'll pop up with a thing. So it's telling me that the current distance between the object and the reference point is 267. Say I want that to be 500. And then the next, this is really, really important. Pay super close attention to this. The first click, so that line that I drew, the first click I clicked was there, and then I was on the object, and then it was on the reference. So it got it wrong here. It's guessed that the first click was the reference point. It wasn't, it was the object. The object was the first thing I clicked, so I need to change that, and then OK, and it will now move it 500 mil away. Just to show you again what it's talking about, if I select the triangle, because it is the object is always the thing that moves, choose the tool, and then I click between the reference point and the triangle, so exactly the same thing. It's done me 267. I want to make it 500, but this time, so it's tried to guess because that was the last thing I wanted, but I did my line in the opposite direction this time. So this time the first click I did, because remember I drew it from the reference point to the object, so the first click was the reference point. So I need to change that again, and it'll do exactly the same thing. So it doesn't matter whether you draw between the object and the reference point, or the reference point and the object, as long as you tell Vectorworks which way you drew the line. Most of the time it does a pretty good job in guessing or understanding which way you did it, but it's only guessing, so you need to tell it. That is really, really useful. If you need to place chairs a certain fire corridor distance away from your set, or you want to place the set a certain distance away from the wall in order to let actors have space to move around, or you need to leave clearance for trucks or something like that, it's a far better way. I mean, again, I've seen people, if you want to move this triangle back, what a really common ugly and bodgy way of doing it is to take the line tool, draw a line 500 long, then take your triangle and click it to the end of the line. Yes, I can, and then I need to delete the line. I can do that, but there is a tool which allows you to specify the distance rather than drawing rogue lines all over the place. Please, please play with that tool and get to know it. Spacing, that duplicate is great for seats, great for lights, for speakers, rigging points, all sorts of stuff. So this tool here, this move by points, is really, really powerful. It's the last one I'm going to do as a kind of talk through. The next ones, the next screencast is your task, and then we're going to move on into 3D. So take time to play with this. It's almost 15 minutes now I've been rabbiting on, so I'm going to stop. But please, please, please take time to play with that tool. It will save you a ton of time in the future if you get to know it, the move by points tool. Okay? See you in the next one for your first task.